How does return preserve scope for JavaScript closures? Imagine you have a magic box that keeps a secret, even after you close the lid. That's kind of what happens when a function returns another function in JavaScript. It creates a special connection called a closure that keeps the outer function's variables alive. When you return a function from another function, it doesn't just disappear once the outer function finishes. Instead, it remembers the environment where it was created. This is because JavaScript uses something called lexical scoping, which means the scope of a function is set by where it is written in the code, not where it is run. So, the inner function remembers the variables from the outer function at the time it was made. When you return an inner function, it keeps a reference to those variables. Even if the outer function is done executing, the inner function can still access and change those variables. This is what we call a closure. For example, if you have a function that creates a counter, and inside it you return another function that increases that counter, the inner function keeps the count variable alive. Every time you call that inner function, it updates the same count. This is because the returned function holds onto the scope of the outer function, preserving the variables inside it. The act of returning the inner function is what makes the closure accessible from outside. If you don't return it or assign it somewhere else, the inner function and its scope are lost once the outer function ends. The closure includes the function itself, plus a reference to the scope where it was created. This scope contains all the variables that were in scope at that moment. Because of this, the inner function can access those variables later, even if the outer function has finished. Closures are useful for many things. They help keep data private, so you can hide variables from outside code. They let functions remember their state, which is great for things like counters or game scores. And in asynchronous JavaScript, closures help preserve context when working with callbacks or promises. So, whenever you see a function returning another function, think of it as creating a little capsule that keeps its environment safe and sound. This is how return values help preserve scope in JavaScript, making your code more flexible and powerful.